go crazy. Let's get nuts. Are we gonna let the elevator break us down? Oh no, let's go. Let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. All right, we got the gang in here already. Wolverine's here and Krusty and Chrome and Jeff and Kaiser. Hi, Morgan. It won't matter because every action only pisses off Putin off more. So he's going, if I can't have Ukraine, I'll destroy both Ukraine and my own people. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. History has shown he's never given anything of a shit about his own people. And certainly that bears out more and more now. I don't disagree with you. I think as more and more of the world squeezes him, it'll probably just enhance his resolve. You know, he gets backed into a corner, and there's no way that Putin is ever going to allow himself to, in his eyes, appear weak. As I've said, I'm sure there's no question in my mind, just knowing the man's ego and demeanor, it's got to be driving him absolutely insane that Zelensky is seen as this warrior badass, because that's all Putin has ever wanted to be. And everywhere he looks, and you guarantee you, he looks around as far as social media, trends, things like that, everybody's seeing him as kind of the bitch in all this, and that's got to be driving him nuts. Crazy. Krusty said the fog of war is pretty thick, and it doesn't help that Western media is hell-bent on shutting up the Russians. I'm not sure what you mean, pal. The fog of war is pretty thick, and it doesn't help the Western media is hell-bent on shutting up the Russians. I'm not sure what you mean by Western media shutting up the Russians. I don't know what you're trying to say. Curtis Largo says, do you think Ukraine will be nuked? Well, actually, I think if nukes are involved, Ukraine won't be the focal point. For one thing, you'll still have Russian troops in the Ukraine. So no, if it came to nukes, that would be because either NATO nations got involved or Putin just decided in his own, whatever's going on in that mind of his, that NATO nations have gotten involved. I'm really curious, and I know it's strictly just rumor, and I like to point that out before I say anything like this, because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm trying to pass off something that's just been bandied around as fact. But so many people are saying that they believe, or then you have some people saying, well, I have reason to believe, don't know if that's true or not, that Putin has some sort of terminal illness. If that's the case, this is really a problem, because it seems like he just doesn't give a fuck. He's got to know that in an exchange with NATO, in a nuclear exchange with NATO, they're obliterated. Granted, they're going to do a lot of damage as well, but they're gone. Russia will be gone. There will be nothing left of it. Krusty says Russian media their side of the story, because from what I've heard, Zelensky and Putin have come to an agreement on where to have peace talks. Well, it's not Zelensky and Putin in person, Krusty, and that's been well covered. The last I knew, the meeting was going on. It's between Russian and Ukrainian contingents. But that meeting was ongoing. It's taking place in Belarus. Benjamin says there's a saying among historians: Russia is never as strong as she presents herself, but she is also never as weak as she seems to be. That's pretty deep. Yeah, that's pretty good, Benjamin. I like that. I think that's true too. That's pretty good. I have never heard that, but yeah, that's Bebop. I don't know. Cowboy Bebop says Cold War 2.0 with a question mark. Because I'm trying to see, because like everyone else, like every sane person, I don't want a major global conflict. I'm trying to see a way out of this to where you could actually ease back into a Cold War. And it all hinges on Putin and if we're right about his mental state or not. Because unless some of you guys have, unless some of you guys have ideas or read things where there's a way now for Putin being in this deep for him to get out of this and save face, because saving face, I believe, is everything to him. And again, we'd have to actually move back to get to Cold War 2.0 right now. Yeah, certainly is, Joe. Philip says, I'll admit there's a part of me that would gladly take being nuked if it meant I didn't have to share the same planet as the idiots that got us into this mess. But at the same time, that's not fair. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, pal. I know exactly what you're saying. And if there is an exchange in nuclear weapons, whoever comes out the best in that horrible situation will be whichever nation or nations have the best likely covert defensive measures against nukes. Because, again, they are the ultimate in offensive weaponry. And if we're talking Russia versus NATO, that's a lot of nukes. So it would all depend on who has the best defenses. Chrome says it's not Cold War 2.0. It's the same Cold War. It just never ended. Yeah, to a degree. I understand what he's saying, though, but yeah. Putin give the rest of us no choice. Well, that's what we're seeing. I'll say cute. That's what we're seeing. I mean, especially with things like Sweden. You know, the ultimate Sweden. Switzerland, with being even delivering sanctions. And you know what's been really interesting to me as well too. Russians are basically cut off almost from worldwide airspace. That's got to be a significant pinch, because aside from Putin and whether or not he has a death wish, the oligarchs in Russia are not going to care for not being able to carry on their lifestyle the way that they choose to do so, and that's over. I mean, in this situation, and a lot of their international holdings have already been seized anyway. So I'm wondering how much, and again, I certainly don't know enough about the inner workings of Russia to know how much sway does Putin's inner circle and the oligarchs have in all this? Any? The other way around, NATO is pushing Russians into suicide tactics. Really, Diamond Owari, how did NATO push Russia into suicide tactics? You're gonna have to explain. Because they were afraid that that Ukraine wanted to join NATO. I mean, as Ukraine is a sovereign nation, they have every right. But if the only difference in the world, if they join NATO, is that they are guaranteed NATO support. And if Putin had no intentions of attacking them, of having an adversarial relationship with them, why should he care? Toker says, nukes are pretty scary, not going to lie. Sure. But does Putin really want to start the apocalypse, or is it just a weird flex? I think that's the $1 million question, Toker. Because it could be, hey, all this could be he's just decided to take the bluff to the extreme. That's entirely possible. But it just, the way he's acting being so uneven. Lunatic says, if Ukraine joined NATO, Russia would lose a nuclear first strike war. With the delivery of nuclear weapons being what they are nowadays, Lunatic, there's, whether they were in, and there was never any conversation to this point about nukes being placed in the Ukraine, but if they were in the Ukraine, you're still going to have the same result from a nuclear war. That's not going to change. A lot of the nukes that both NATO and Russia are going to launch aren't coming from within their own individual nations. Nuclear war is going to be apocalyptic, period. So that's why I say I don't really understand that whole rationale. Now, if the Ukraine had joined NATO and then NATO wanted to place nukes in the Ukraine, I would say, yeah, he would have a legitimate beef, just like the U.S. did when nukes were placed in Cuba. That I get. I get that. But to preemptively go in and start killing all these people under the guise of, well, you're getting too close to the West, too close to NATO, I think that's bullshit. You got to wonder, Q says, I just hope his generals are more responsible than him. Yeah, and how much sway do the generals have with him? I saw this picture. I grabbed it. I don't have any idea, just because it's all over social media right now. But that being said, I don't know if this is even a current picture. It's being presented that way, but who knows for sure. But look at this picture. Regardless, that's a weird picture. Because it's not like it's early or late in a meeting and everybody in attendance is no longer there or hasn't gotten there yet. I mean, if you look, there's only chairs way the fuck down here. If that is current, that's really kind of bizarre. Isn't it? You could say COVID, okay, but that's way the fuck more than 6 feet. There are no masks. Could it possibly be that Putin in this situation, and this is just a guess. I don't even know if this is legitimately recent. If anybody knows any background behind the picture, please let me know. But could he be actually letting no one near him? I mean, is it a possibility he has concerns that his own people might be saying, yeah, that's enough? I don't know. It just struck me as a weird picture. Masterman says, hey, just came here. Can you tell me your views? Because everything we get in Germany is propaganda. Yeah, we'll be talking about the whole stream, Masterman. And again, my views are just my opinions. You know, if I have read something is verified, I'll let you know, before as I state it. But basically, it's all and that's all any of us really have right now, are opinions, trying to get a handle on how everybody involved has acted, is acting, and what the eventuality of all that would be. Matthew says, Putin and Trump are old and dying, so have to leave a legacy, and it gets to the point where you just say, fuck it. Well, that's what you're afraid of, Matthew. That's what you fear. I mean, regardless, and no matter what, like, the extreme left or idiots on social media have to say, obviously, there's no one individual in America that could do what Putin's doing right now. There's too many systems of checks and balances. And listen, as somebody who voted for Trump, not even close to being a Trumper, voted for Trump because it was the better of two piss poor options twice, I can guarantee you that if we have a president that wants to invade another nation in a similar fashion as what was done here, yeah, I would be calling for his ouster right away and wouldn't have to call for it because it would have been taken care of already. Because, for one thing, a move like this would have to go through Congress, and if it didn't, it would be a violation and he'd get impeached. Bebop says, hey, have you seen the NATO website? It's got info. I haven't checked the NATO website in a couple days. Info on what though, pal? I don't know what you mean. Info on what? Yeah, Masterman. He says worst case scenario is China getting involved. Truth, but that's looking less and less likely, and not impossible. China. my personal take, just from what we've seen from China's reactions and the things they've said and done, I've always believed that China and Russia is an alliance purely where they're trying to use one another. There's no real core relationship there. And I don't think China's on board with this at all. Now, I think China was interested when this broke, considering their desires to take Taiwan. But I think as it stands now, China's like, as far as Putin goes, it's like, okay, bro, this didn't work out well. And I don't think they want this to escalate. They can't say that on the world stage because they want to maintain that tenuous relationship with Russia. But I don't think they're feeling it right now. Javon says, don't underestimate him. He's a sociopath. If he's pushed to the edge over time, he'll be well aware of his situation when he gets there. He'll use nukes as a last resort. Well, that's what we're afraid of. I don't disagree with you. That's what we fear. At this point, everyone will suffer. Putin will die, but he'll die with a sick grin on his face. His death won't change much in such situation. Nukes will already devastate the world. No, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's the fear. And that's why we keep discussing the most likely way that gets cut off is either by a mass, and I mean a mass, revolt in Russia of the people, or an individual or group of individuals at the top of the Russian food chain, the Russian political food chain, decide to take him out. I think that's the only way you really stop anything. If we're given that Putin just doesn't give a fuck anymore, I think that's the only way you stop it. Anton says, your view on Sweden and Finland joining NATO. As a Swede, I think we should. And again, I fully admit I'm no expert on foreign affairs. I read and read and read whatever I can, and you have to do so much reading nowadays because you can't ever take just one source as accurate on anything because we don't have a useful media anymore here in America. I would think, at least from my understanding of things, I would think it would definitely be to their benefit, especially considering this latest action by Putin and their proximity to him. I would think so. Tyler says, do you think the sanctions will actually do anything? To me, sanctions only harm the civilians, and that would only help if they supported Putin in the first place. Possible. Like you said, I don't think, Tyler, that the sanctions are devastation, especially to Putin individually. What you hope for is the sanctions hurt the people around him enough. And as I said, the oligarchs in Russia, I'm sure they're not pleased with the sanctions at all. And again, it sucks that you have to hurt innocent people in Russia. But if it is enough to potentially create a serious uprising that Putin can't put down, then you've accomplished something with them. But the rest of the world can't sit by and do nothing. Really, your only options were sanctions or warfare, because you cannot do nothing. Bebop says it's NATO's side of the promises made to Russia. I'm getting that in pieces. Let me see if I can see your last post so I can put it together with it. Have you seen the NATO website? Oh, it's got info. Okay. I'd forgotten what the first one said. It's NATO's side of the promises made to Russia. Gotcha. No, I haven't seen that yet. Has anybody heard anything more? I haven't. Has anybody heard anything more from any official source about the meetings between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations? I haven't heard anything about it. It started some time ago, didn't it? Swelly says, if China want to invade Taiwan and North Korea want to invade the South, is the perfect time. Well, that's what everybody's afraid of. I think, again, just opinion, Swelly, I think China's kind of backed off on the Taiwan thing. This isn't going, no matter what ends up happening, as it stands right now, this is not going well for Russia at all. And I don't think China China certainly does not want to deal with what Russia's dealing with at this moment. China's economy, although in a slump, a significant slump, is much better than Russia's. And I don't think Xi Jinping has anything of a death wish or a lack of concern about his own death, as a lot of people believe is the case with Putin. Honey Badger says, Putin saying that why do we need the world if Russia won't be in it is concerning. It's very concerning. And the naive American BS and not taking him seriously is what's going to end the world. Oh, I mean, listen, I'm not, America's always right, rah, 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 but I don't think anybody ever didn't take him seriously. You do? I've never seen any indications that Putin hasn't been taken seriously here by either side of the aisle. Let's see. Sex says, do you think Russians are going to be ostracized because of Big P of Putin? That's part of the thing that bothers me too. And you see it, fortunately, I haven't seen a lot of instances of it. But let me put this out there for anybody that, and I think our group here, at least our core group, is way too smart to fall into a trap like this. Remember something. This action came from Putin as the head of the Russian government. You do not strike back at him in any way by victimizing innocent Russian people. As I've said over and over and over, nobody is victimized by the Russian government more than the Russian people. Look at the quality of life over there, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's because of the mismanagement by Vladimir Putin, the intentional mismanagement by Vladimir Putin. So if you're frustrated with what Russia's done and everything, that's understandable. But trying to take it out in any way, shape, or form on a Russian person is just fucking stupid. Because it's very likely that Russian person is even more pissed off about this than are you. McKinley says, that's why I'm saying Russian people, higher ups in government and oligarchs should grow some balls and put Putin in his place. Right. That's what you hope for. If it's even possible. I don't even know how that structure works, McKinley. How it really works. Putin's inner circle and how that's structured. Who knows? But yes, that's absolutely, seemingly to me anyway, that is the best possible outcome in all this, is that the inner circle, the upper inner circle, and the oligarchs say, nope, this is over. Chrome says the sanctions are fairly meaningless. If you want to hurt them economically, hit China. That's who's funding them. At the very least, start building up your energy and oil sectors again to hit them. Like I say, the only thing is, Chrome, yes, the sanctions are largely meaningless to Putin. What you hope for is the sanctions affect the people around Putin enough to hopefully work up towards his ouster. That's what you're hope for. Oh, thanks, Benjamin. I appreciate that. I love those stickers. It's simple. I like them. Gosha says, you never give such power to one person ever. Agreed. But in fairness to the Russian people, he took it. It's not like it was given to him. He took it. He played the game, and he took it. Krusty says, Russians have already been ostracized by the rest of the world, taking them off. So, well, when I was responding to that ostracization, I'm talking about as individuals. We all know what the sanctions were, but I mean as people in actual individual, how they relate to other people who are Russian, basically nullifying their ability to enter the global town square. Just name a few. But we all know that, and that's the unfortunate side effect, or the unfortunate effect of sanctions. But again, there aren't many options, and what you hope is, again, if the Russians in mass start to feel the pinch, maybe that's how you get them out of there. Now, what I'm curious too, we talk about nuclear war. Now, we know the President of the United States carries the football, but there is a whole process that has to take place before nukes can be launched, and that process involves individuals turning the keys. I wonder what the process is in Russia. Because the fact is, every member of the military, from the lowest greener to the top brass are instructed to disobey any order that violates the Constitution. So given that, a president could call for a nuclear strike and let whoever, let's say either Trump is the maniac that everybody says he is, or Biden's brain has become pudding, as a lot of people believe it has. Either one of them, if they call for a nuclear strike and it's egregious and it's not something that is in the best interest of the country and the world, the military members are supposed to ignore that order. What happens if Putin decides he wants to send out nukes? Well, I wonder what does that process actually look like? I doubt the West actually even knows for sure. That's something I never thought to try and look up, though. Chrome says that's what I'm saying. It's not hurting his oligarchs either. I disagree. He invaded Ukraine to appease them in part. He's after the oil pipeline he wants to build in Ukraine and probably a warm water port. I disagree, Chrome. With them, with the airspace, Russia is basically cut off. Russian air travel is cut off. There's no place in the world for them to go. The oligarchs are leading a really good life. We know that now they're stuck in Russia. A lot of their international holdings have been seized. I think that squeeze is not going to sit well with them at all. I just don't believe it is. These are people who are used to a certain lifestyle. I'm sure really enjoy that lifestyle. And I don't think they want to have to sit in Russia motionless, unable to go out and do what they want to do. Let's see. How much is Russia? Is Russia Kosovo? Is there? I'm not sure what that was even about. James says each generation gets dragged into older people's problems. Putin is acting like a man-child, and people are dying for it. Yeah, well, you said it, James. That's been the history of the world, but that's unavoidable. No matter how life unfolds on this planet, newer generations are always going to have to deal with what the prior generations did. It's just the nature of time. Yeah, Johnny says, if you watch the recent televised speeches by Putin, he's showing no emotion other than hints of anger that peek through. The man is not there mentally. That's what you really fear. And he's always been largely emotionless, but this just all feels different. Okay, Tesla, go back to the farm. Oh, he's already hidden. Good, perfect. Somebody got him before I got him. God damn it. He's a dictator, not a president. Truth, Goodman. Very true. Here's an interesting post in the midst of a discussion of potential nuclear war. Have you heard about the Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker saga? I don't know. That could be a key to stopping all this. This could be a key to heading off Putin. I don't know. Oren says, what would sanctions do anyway? Sanctions might work for a small island that lacks its own farmland and factories, but Russia is as big as the entire hemisphere and has resources everywhere. And that's not truth at all, Oren. Russia is, as is most of the world, is very dependent on supplies from other parts of the world. I mean, we know we have a number of Russian people here, how difficult it is under normal circumstances to have the things that you would most want in Russia. That's not true at all. It's not even remotely true. Philip says the folks that dump vodka in solidarity with Ukraine are stupid. I agree. Russia isn't the only country that produces vodka. So yeah, we produce it here in America. Most of Eastern Europe. Waste of money, vodka and potatoes. No, I agree with you. Philip, I think a lot of that is the social media influence on the world. It's like, look at me. Everybody's gonna pay attention to me because I'm gonna do this thing that looks really cool. Like I'm part of the solution. It's unfortunate but true. No, you're right. It's absolutely asinine. Yeah, they were doing that. They started that early on. Lost Ranger says was watching the news this morning. They're blocking out street signs in Ukraine so the Russians don't know where they're heading. Yeah, I saw that. pretty sharp actually. Pax says every time I see someone who supports Russia, I'm sorry, they don't actually have a valid reason for doing so. I haven't seen one yet either. They just hate the West. Not even Russian citizens support Russia right now. Yeah, I haven't either, Pax. Not yet. I don't. Let's see. Nectar says, I don't think theories about Putin's health have any evidence. Well, that's probably why when we talked about Putin's health, I said there's no evidence, that people have just bandied that about. But thanks for reinforcing that. Putin's been pissed off because 14,000 plus killed Russian civilians in Donbass for 8 years. So rather than liberating the Donbass region, that to you justifies the actions now. And you might want to stick with Nectar, at least stick with a consistent line of why he's doing what he's doing. I've heard several from you so far. It was neo-Nazis at one point too. And yeah, I got news for you. When you have a nation or an area that was once part of the USSR, as Ukraine was, and then it breaks away, yes, you're still going to have a lot of Russian nationals in there. And yes, that's probably going to cause some internal strife. So if what you're saying is that strife justifies Putin coming in and trying to take a sovereign nation, I say you're full of shit. Policy Gaming says, also the United States has an empire we will not sacrifice for a small little country that we use to funnel corrupt money into. Well, it's bigger than that, though, Polly. It's far bigger than that. Is Ukraine the end game, though? Is this all that Putin is looking for? I don't think so. Just the way he's spoken during this himself, I don't think so. You know, he was immediately out there, and this is what struck me as different than Putin's usually he's very strategic, solidly strategic. When he's immediately alluding to the fact that he's more than willing to use nukes and saying, you know, if anybody tries to intervene in this, they'll see something they've never seen before, that type of stuff. It just seemed over the edge. So I'm not, and a lot of the concern is that this isn't his end game here. And the things he has said would make you believe that's very possibly the case. Chrome says, sorry, word limit. What I mean is long term, they don't think it'll hurt. Last time Russia invaded a country that had sanctions placed on them, they were removed a while after it calmed down. Oh, well, that Chrome, if Putin is of right mind, yeah, I agree. That's probably what he had planned all along. I even mentioned that the other day. Is you make the move, you accomplish what you want to accomplish. That's been his MO in the past. Let the dust settle, and then start. You know, you start making the pleas that okay, the sanctions need to go now. That's water under the bridge. You're hurting our people, and eventually they get lifted. Yeah, if Putin is of that same strategic and sound mind he always was, and this is just a new, harsher type of strategy for him, then that is probably the case. Domenico says, news about the meetings. In Italy, one of our news channels reported that Zelensky refused the offer to basically surrender. And again, now, as we said, guys, Domenico is getting it from his news in Italy. It hasn't been verified outside of that. But that wouldn't be a surprise, Domenico. A lot of people, myself included, believed that I think Russia only agreed to this meetings as a diversionary tactic. We know we had equipment running out of fuel. I think they're resetting as this meeting went on, and I think the Russians were sent in there to make ridiculous demands that they knew weren't going to fly, but would buy some time. Excuse me. Chrome says, I don't believe the terminal illness thing for a second. That's possible. It reeks of propaganda. At best, it's just him getting old and wanting to be remembered as the one who brought back the empire. Well, there's no doubt he's always wanted to bring back the empire. I don't think that's ever been a question. And that's the concern is he's just, whatever the reason, whether it's terminal illness or like you say, just getting older and how he wants to be remembered in history. He's just seems like he's gotten to that, don't give a fuck. And he's always had that to a degree, but now it's a really significant don't give a fuck. That's good, Domenico. I like that. Putin is the type of guy that would steal all the cookies from the cookie jar and then blame it on the jar. Joe Chronic says Moldova, Georgia, and other nations like Finland should be let into NATO ASAP. Otherwise, they're next. Well, that's the big fear. Of course, they have to. All those nations would have to desire NATO membership to begin with. But yes, that's the big fear. Is it's not going to stop at Ukraine, and that's, I mean, whether it happens or not, that's a very legitimate concern. I didn't see that. Luke says, so Curtis, did you see that the Taliban, of all people, were calling for peace between Russia and Ukraine because we live in a South Park episode? I didn't see that, Lex. The Taliban calling for peace? Really? No, I didn't see that. First wave negativity says, I'm not sure how accurate this was because it was from a Ukraine source. Very good. But apparently this war is costing Russia $20 billion a day. It's pretty clear Russia isn't rich enough to sustain this. It's actually becoming increasingly clear to me that war in the modern world is unsustainably expensive for all but superpowers like the U.S. This is good news both for Ukraine and for the future. I'd like to think that's good news, first wave, but you know what my fear is with that? And that could be true. And even if the number's wrong, the expense could be a factor. And my only concern with that is Putin's state of mind. That would be good news if we're convinced that if money runs out, he'll think of some sort of concession that lets him save face and this will end. The other option is if he sees money's running out and he knows it's a no-win situation, he goes all red light district and he starts wanting to light things up. Yeah, really. Krusty says, oh boy, the tallies telling Russia to stop was hilarious. I'd missed that. I didn't see that. Oh, okay, Gosha. Thank you. I appreciate that. Gosha says, I am Georgian, and Georgia wanted to be in NATO for past 9 years. That's good to know. See, this is one of the reasons I love having these conversations is you can actually talk to people from the regions we're discussing. I didn't know that. Yes, and I agree. They should be green lit in. Yes, absolutely. I agree. Thick Eyebrow Guy says, what do you think of India and China abstaining? Ugh. China didn't surprise me. Actually, if anything, China abstaining was a plus because they could have very well voted for Russia instead of just staying out of it. India abstaining, given their politics, is not a huge surprise. Not real surprising to me. Goodman says there was propaganda that Kyiv was captured in 2 days, that Russia had to retract. You can still find it online. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure in fairness, I'm sure there's plenty of propaganda going all over the place from both sides. There's no question about that. And especially, again, nowadays with social media, it's easy to propagate propaganda. So I'm sure it is. That's why I appreciate you guys so much, and that's what everybody's been doing. When people write things, they're even writing, okay, I don't know this to be true, or this is who's responsible for saying that. So, again, instead of just taking like so many media outlets do, social media outlets, especially like YouTube, and just saying, oh, well, I heard that, so it's got to be true. Where'd you hear it? Well, I it was on a graph, on a meme in Twitter, so it's real, and there's a lot of that going around, that kind of simplistic thinking. Yurik says, I am from Eastern Europe and we still have trauma from the old Soviet. So believe me, most of us are not fond of Soviet lovers like Putin. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure, my friend. Pax says, Finland and Sweden better join NATO fast. That's my thinking. Again, I am not as well versed on international affairs as I should be, but that's on the surface. That's certainly how I see it, Pax. Once the Ukraine conflict ends, they'll be the only European countries close to Russia that aren't in besides Belarus. They could easily be next. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, though, too, personally, I believe if Putin makes a move on Finland and or Sweden, and it's nothing I take pleasure in saying, but doesn't the international community have to then get involved militarily, whether they're part of NATO or not? Because everything that people are saying for justification for the invasion of Ukraine, well, whether it's the whole neo-Nazi thing or that Russians were being abused in the certain areas of the Ukraine or whatever it may be, none of that applies to Sweden and Finland, who were never part of the USSR. So at that point, doesn't the rest of the world, or doesn't at least NATO, have to get involved militarily? Artist Anthony says, like, attack directly in mass. Yeah, that's the thing too. And if push comes to shove like that, boy, I wouldn't want to have to make those calls. So just to play devil's advocate, let's say, excuse me, I'm sorry, guys, something like that takes place. Russia goes into Finland and Sweden, and there's got to be a response. Do you make the response pure fury? A furious going to pummel you into submission and not give you the chance to fire back as much as possible? Or do you approach them on the ground? Do you just send troops in and let the pieces fall where they may? I don't know. Strategically, I don't know. Ezreal says, what is wrong with defending the weak? The war in Ukraine with Lugansk and Donetsk was raging for 8 years. They were weak, no life support through water. You gotta explain yourself better for me. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Masterman says EU members are contractually bound to return to the original borders, but nothing more. Krusty says, I think NATO getting involved militarily just spells mass destruction. Nobody would want that. Nuclear powers in this world have enough power to literally destroy this planet several times over. Truth, Krusty, but so there is no line in the sand? I mean, that's the other option. So you're saying just let Putin take whoever he wants to take? And I'm not being a wise ass, it's just those are your options. We're talking about if Putin went into, for anybody who just came in, what if Putin were to go into, say, Finland and Sweden? Would the world not have to, NATO have to, whether they're NATO members or not, they are not at the time, wouldn't they have to back them up militarily? And again, I know none of us want world war, but at what point is enough then? Finita says, what is wrong with defending Ukraine? The fact Russia has nukes. Nobody here, I believe, thinks anything's wrong with defending Ukraine. Hey, Steve. Anton says, Finland has built there since Cold War for a specific Russian attack. And the terrain in Finland is extremely hard to take, so good luck, Russia. Oh, true? Yeah, that's interesting, too. That's an interesting thing, too. See, and again, that's why I love hearing from you guys who live in the regions over there. Agree with that, FZ. It's surprising the Ukrainians have managed to hold out for this long. Yeah. I do think, I fully believe their resistance has been a major surprise to Putin. I don't think he expected to still be involved, to still be fighting a war this many days in. He thought he would blow through there. That's what I believe he was thinking. True. That's true, FC. Soviet Russia tried to invade Finland and failed. And we're seeing a lot of that similar type of thing right now. And it's all about the individuals involved, too. People will fight willingly with their lives to defend their homelands. And again, now I'm going to say something that I don't know to have been confirmed. I just know that it has been rumored from a huge number of sources. If it's true that a big portion of the military units that Russia deployed were not even aware of what the mission was, it's certainly not outrageous to question how devoted they are to this mission. I mean, there is significant damage to the Russians. There's been significant loss of life. If you're a rank and file soldier, hell, even if you're an officer, are you looking at that and going, for what? It's not really worth it. This loss of life is not worth trying to take Ukraine. I believe there's going to be a lot of soldiers feeling exactly that way. Stormstar says, I said a couple of days ago WW3 is impossible. Not only am I retracting that statement, I'm terrified now. I think he's crazy enough to do it. I think that's where the journey a lot of us have been on, Stormstar. I agree with you. I think a lot of us are feeling that way. Oh, did they? Chrome says South Korea joined the SWIFT sanctions, by the way. They banned exports of strategic items to Russia. I hadn't heard about them yet. Harley says, is Putin's babushka alive? We'll just tell on him to her. I think the only that I know of, and again, you guys, a lot of you guys probably have more knowledge about such things than do I. The only relatives I know that Putin has ever been known to really have a concern for, it seems, are his daughters. Dick Fiddler. Go back to fiddling your dick. Joe Chronic. The modern era and digital age has led to a lot of people from all over the world coming together despite nationality, unlike past wars. This can lead to a lot of Russian soldiers feeling sympathetic. Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's very true. Yeah, it brings the reality of other individuals clearly into focus. FC says, just don't try to invade Russia while it's still winter. Napoleon and Hitler both made that mistake. Yep. Vin says, I feel like there's an underlying issue with Putin that no one knows about. And he is just saying, fuck it. This is just a bullshit mess. But the Ukraine has balls of serious brass. Agreed. And that's what we were talking about earlier. You just got to wonder, no matter how many different ways you break down the reasons for Putin to want to go into the Ukraine, I have yet to see any of them that honestly make a lot of sense to me in the respect that it would be worth this. Again, the Ukraine used to be part of the USSR. When it breaks away, there's going to be strife. Anytime a major shift within a land occurs like that, of course there's going to be strife. There are going to be people still there that are loyal to Russia. There's no question about it. And because of that, there's going to be violence. Is that enough reason to go in and take out a sovereign nation? Redemption says some random citizen in Ukraine drove up to 3 Russian soldiers out of gas standing by their tank. Asked them if they would like him to tow them back to Russia. All your soldiers seem lost, I talked to. We're hearing more and more stories like that. And now we've seen some pictures. It does seem like we can safely say that at least in the early days of the war, there was some poor planning. Because it does seem like a lot of Russian vehicles were unexpectedly unable to move forward. Now this is a great screen name, you guys. My cock is very small, but Moscow just put out a statement saying that countries sending military equipment to Ukraine will be responsible if they're used against Russian forces. Well, I mean, that gets to, now you're at the point, and I think most everybody will agree, you just say, fuck you. No, you're asking other nations to get involved in this and attack Ukraine on your behalf, and you think you can tell the rest of the world, no, you can't support the Ukraine simply with sending supplies? Yeah, okay. That's either, again, he's just absolutely lost his mind, or he thinks the way to go about this is to play the ultimate crazy tough guy. Chrome says, did you see the Rolling Stone story? Russian OnlyFans models can't get paid amid sanctions priorities. Oh, that's got to be hurting the girls. There's some. Well, we learned from Family Guy that all the women in Russia are either insanely hot or just horrific. Philip says, based on what I've heard, it seems like it was amateur hour over at the Russian High Command when this invasion started. Really, it didn't seem. It certainly didn't seem well structured, well thought out, and it seems like and again, this is, I'm not saying this is what happened, I'm saying the appearance is that Putin just said, well, just send them in, don't worry about game planning all this, just send them in, it's just Ukraine, we'll just wipe them, we'll run through them, we'll take what we want, we'll accomplish what we want, maybe we'll hold on to that and bring it back into our reformation of the USSR. That's the way it seems. It was almost like flippant, it seems. Kyle says, hey, Curtis, 50 years from now, Ukraine's president will definitely be in the history book. He's such a badass and loyal as fuck. You're 100% right, Kyle. No matter what the eventuality is there, yes, there is no question that Zelensky will be a noted figure of history for all time. There's no question about it. The eyebrow guy says Putin is real life Aaron Yeager. Not far off. Not far off. I think he might even be a little more aggressive even than Aaron. For those of you who don't know, that's a character from Attack on Titan. Anton says, perhaps some field generals did this shitty planning intentionally because they don't really want this war. Interesting look, Anton. I hadn't thought about that. I again, given the rationale for going into the Ukraine, don't you guys agree? You gotta think there are some people, generals, the people in the upper echelon of Russian political decision making. There's got to be a significant number of them who are saying, "Nah, this is not good," right? Doesn't there? I mean, just because they can't say that to Putin doesn't mean that's not their take on it. I can't believe, and I won't believe, that a move like this is going to have 100% of the military brass on board. First wave negativity says, have you seen the footage of Russian tanks running out of gas in the middle of the road and asking Ukrainian civilians for help? I have seen some of that video. It's that saying, amateurs talk strategy, veterans talk logistics. It does seems like this was, excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. It does seem, as I said, like it was just kind of like, hey, you know what? Let's go into the Ukraine. Domenico says NATO and Russia are basically Aaron and Zeke. I like the AOT. Oh yeah, the AOT comparisons. Vin says this is a terrible mess, but hopefully this world will be stronger and alliances will be stronger as well, and hopefully less conflict. Well, yeah, hopefully, we come out of this mess with the world largely intact the way it is now. Oh, here we go. Vegeta says, I'm from Estonia, 100 kilometers from the border. We laughed when your president told us about invasion on Ukraine. Now it's not that funny. USA and UK are already sending troops to our country, tanks, etc. Yeah. I can't even imagine what, all of you guys that are in that region. I mean, it's terrifying for us here in the US. I can't even imagine what it's like for you guys right there, that close to the actual activity. Chrome says it's just shown how incompetent and unprepared the Russian military really is. They don't have any proper on-the-ground training, unlike the U.S. and Ukrainian military, which is constantly at war. Well, and that too, and everything, I think too, to a certain degree, Chrome, comes back to money. And the Russian economy has been in the tank for how long? I mean, seriously tanked for decades. There's just not a lot. We know from what we're getting from people who have been inside of Russia that the military is vastly underpaid, excuse me, under malnourished, and morale sucks. First Wave says the logic of Russia is incomprehensible to me. It is simultaneously okay for Russia to invade Luhansk, I always pronounce these poorly, and Donetsk because most of their population wants to join Russia, and also not okay for Ukraine to join NATO when most Ukrainians want to. Well, there's no solid rationale in all of this, and it seems like the desires or the impetus for this invasion changes almost by the hour with whatever line they want to go with currently, because there is nothing that justifies the invasion of a sovereign nation over any of this. Alucard says if Russia really wants to take Kyiv, then they'll need to kill every pro-Ukraine citizen in the Ukraine, and even then there'll still be more to fight. Right, that's the thing too, Alucard, we've talked about before, is even if Russia were to take Kyiv, take significant portions of Ukraine, if they try to occupy that nation, I think the resistance will go on for years, possibly decades. I think they'll be getting hit with terrorist attacks, people shooting Russian invaders from their windows. I think it would never end there. That's just my opinion. Kyle says, to be honest, if Russia really wanted to, they could wipe out Ukraine within a day. I think Russia's trying to pressure Ukraine to give them the land connected to the ocean. Kyle, I think the only way Russia could wipe out Ukraine in a day is with nukes. And of course, any nuke detonated anywhere in the world would require an immediate response. To say just on the ground militarily, no, I don't think they can just take out the Ukraine in a day. I don't think they are. I don't think Russia is going into this saying, we'll take our time about it. There's no sense of just kicking their ass quick. I think they planned on taking them out, excuse me, within a matter of a couple days. Just isn't as easy as they had hoped. Johnny says, who would have thought an ex-comedian would make this good of a wartime president? Right. Zelensky is becoming my favorite foreign leader. Understandable. Douglas, your fund, whatever it is, may be well-intentioned. It may be legitimate. And the money may actually go to helping those in the Ukraine. But we're not allowing any calls for funds in our chat because we don't know that's the case. So there's no sense in putting them there. We'll just delete the posts, and if they continue, we'll just ban you from the server. Equinox says, Russia also have their version of the Moab. It's like a nuke, but none of the mess, and I think they threatened to use it. Oh, I wouldn't surprise me, Equinox. I mean, they've already threatened to use nukes, so wouldn't surprise me they threatened to use Moabs. Philip says, clearly Russia wanted to pull a blitzkrieg like the Germans did during World War II. The problem is that as often as blitzkrieg worked as a tactic, it failed just as often. Yeah, I think you're right, Philip. I mean, I do. Everything points to Russia having believed that this was going to be we're going to walk in, take care of business, walk out, good, done, tied up. I think that's what they expected. Let's see. Christopher says, incredible people, the Ukrainians. Yes. Even threat of a nuke, they will keep going if most feel they could. Amazing people, such resilience. I agree. And throughout history, we've seen that a lot. And, when any nation has gone into another nation to fight the people on their territory, and listen, Ukrainians, and especially their president, are badasses. It's just all there is to it. Harley says Zelensky is a horrible wartime leader. That's an interesting take. He's forcibly conscripting civs and arming the civilians against trained soldiers that surprisingly seem to want minimal casualties. Everyone's a bad guy here. Couldn't disagree with you more, Harley. Doesn't make him a bad leader. He's telling that is their nation. That is their world. That is how they want to live. Telling those people that we will give you arms to help us fight against an opponent that has every advantage in the world. And maybe those civilians can be just enough to tip the scales. No, I completely disagree with you. I completely understand why civilians want to take up those arms. Domenico says, UN, you can invade an independent nation. Putin, hold my vodka. Yeah. Masterman says, some major superpowers have the weakest leader in history. Not saying that's the reason, but undoubtedly played a part in why Putin can play tough now. I will say this. I do think there's no doubt that Putin felt he could accurately predict the response from Biden more so than he could from Trump. Because that's not saying that Putin was afraid of Trump or anything like that. I don't think that's the case. What I'm saying is Trump is out there just like Putin is, in the respect that you don't know what he's going to do next. And even if the mainstream media were right and Putin and Trump were the best of buds, that doesn't matter either, because we've already seen how Trump treats ex-best friends as soon as they don't pray properly at his altar. So I think there is something to be said for that. I think Putin knows how Biden will respond. And I think Biden, and that's not a criticism, I think Biden responded the only way he could, and that's what Putin figured. I don't think you can figure Trump. That's a part of the issue. That's why it's taking place now, I believe. Tom says, I personally wouldn't be surprised if the people of Russia try to assassinate Putin. Well, that's what we really got to root for, Tom. And not just for our own interests, for the people of Russia. If they could accomplish that, that would be awesome for everybody. Obviously, it could potentially take away, because you don't know who's going to follow him, but it would likely take away the threat of World War III. And depending on how Russia moves forward from that, it could also alleviate all the stress from the Russian people by getting the sanctions eased or removed altogether. So yes, when I say that's what you hope for, it's not just as a Westerner. You hope for it for the innocent people of Russia as well. Jeep Girl, Trump lifted sanctions. He was absolutely working for Putin benefit. Absolutely incorrect. As a matter of fact, Biden lifted sanctions on Russia when he got in. Absolutely incorrect. Zurazul says Putin should squeeze the trigger of a Makarov. First wave negativity says also the Ukraine as neo-Nazi sympathizers is silly. Ukraine is one of the most progressive countries in that area and has a Jew as president. Shocking how many people just fell for the propaganda. Well, that's what it is, first wave. And like I say, it's, you get different takes on why Russia made this move depending on what time of day it is. Truth, SAO says people have been trying to assassinate Putin for years. Good luck. No, that's true. I do think an act like this will certainly intensify those attempts and embolden those attempts, but you're right. You can't have gotten to the top of national politics in a place like Russia without having a lot of enemies. Dominic says, from what I heard, Russia is entering Ukraine to get rid of the evil and Western deep state criminals in charge, and also to get rid of any nukes the West is sending to Ukraine. Russia is not bad. That's a good one. That's new. The evil and Western deep state. You got Western deep state in there? You better tell Zelensky that. I don't know if he's aware. And you honestly think there were, with today's technology and Russian technology, you think nukes were just kind of slipped into the Ukraine and nobody noticed? Just kind of put them under the doormat? I tell you, when people come in to defend Putin's actions and they're that mind-numbingly stupid, it kind of tells you that there is no reason for them to be there. That was a good one. I like that. Jeez, my vagina is very loose, but Putin needs to take shrooms. Orna says the skin color of the leader isn't a good argument, though. We have living examples of people like Stinkmeaner from the Boondocks as example. Well, I don't know the whole history, Jared, but I mean, basically, Ukraine changed their style of government when they were removed from the USSR. Well, actually, there were nukes in the Ukraine when they were removed from the umbrella of the USSR, and there was a deal signed to return all those nukes back to Russia. Florencio says, why so many people support Putin? Well, you have to remember, Russia has a massive, massive online propaganda arm, and guarantee they're all out in force now. You have to take things like what I just read there with a grain of salt. It's unserious people for the most part, basically bots who are told to this is what we want to get across, put it out there, and then there are just some who are a little, a few bricks short of a wheelbarrow full that believe this stuff. Zerzel says, no, Mr. UN representative, I don't know what happened here. I heard Putin fell down the stairs. I have no idea how that bullet hole got into his head. A bullet was falling down the stairs at the same time. Yerek says, no matter what, people need to unify when foreign threats are concerned. Some of the right wing's recent Putin fetish is pathetic to see. I agree with that. Chrome says it's not a case of fear, it's just that he knew what Trump would do. Trump would respond harshly if Putin acted one of his allies. Trump really was not unpredictable. He did strongman politics. Yes and no, Chrome, but I think that's unfair to say that Trump wasn't unpredictable. I think he's one of the most unpredictable people we've ever seen in a high position of government in the world. And we've seen that just here domestically. I think Trump was very unpredictable. And Trump said himself, Trump was very adamant, and I fully support him on that. He said he wanted America not involved in wars anymore. He was very adamant about that. And I just honestly believe Putin knows Trump well enough to know that you don't know Trump. There's no telling what he'll do. Vin says Putin just needs a hug from Olaf. Hey, Karu. Thick Eyebrow Guy says, will China invade Taiwan? My opinion, no. I don't think so. Not anytime soon. If this was to China, if this was a blueprint and they're waiting to see the results of the laying out of this blueprinted plan, I think that will have told them, no, it's not a good idea. I think there's less chance of them doing it soon now than there was before this all began. Madman says Putin is so damn evil. Boris and Natasha quit the espionage business. Bullwinkle and Rocky can rest easy. Let's see. Yerk says this. Oh, I'm sorry. You respond to someone else. Apathy is death says, what's funny when it's the United States and Syria, when the genocide in Serbia, etc., is bringing democracy. When Russia sent troops to help separatists, we are outcast for the whole world. Well, here's the thing. Two things on that. First, that's a whole separate conversation if we want to go into why the United States is in wherever, fill in the blank. For another, it's a whataboutism. Makes absolutely no difference to the topic at hand whether what Putin's doing is right or wrong. Makes no difference to anything that has happened anywhere prior. This situation exists in a vacuum, and that's what we have to deal with right now. Again, you can go back and forth on any nation, anywhere. all their military actions they've had. Do I agree with everything America's ever done militarily? No. But to lump them together and say all bad, no, I don't agree with that either. But none of it has anything to do with what's going on here right now. ODB says, let's be honest, Ukraine has no lube. Oh, Anonymous just put out another video, Goodman? I'll have to check that out. I'm curious to see where they stand now. Chrome says, people kind of forget that during World War II, Russia's successes only came from using their citizens as giant expendable meat shields. They're not good military strategists. Yeah, it does seem like this was definitely poorly thought out. It's little doubt about that. Mr. Fizzaroli says, I'm concerned that what Russia is doing is going to cause another civil war and another war with the government. How do you feel about that? I'm not, you got to be a little more specific, Mr. Fizzaroli. Civil war where? Within Russia? I'm not sure what you mean. Within Russia, I don't know if it started a civil war. It could start an uprising. And it's probably, if it was successful, that would probably go a long way towards potentially getting us out of this situation. Kaiser says we need Goku to take out another Red Ribbon Army here. Truth. And hopefully that King Piccolo isn't as tough or has access to the Dragon Balls. Excuse me. C2D says Ukraine has won the propaganda war so far. I agree with that. I won't even go so far as to say everything's propaganda, but they're getting their messaging out there good. The current and former, whether their messaging is accurate or not, it's getting out there. The current and former president staying in Ukraine at their own risk. Snake Island loads others, and holding out so far has really emboldened people. I agree. I completely agree. Chrome says, celebrities. Hold on, I'm going to take a peek at this link real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, I know people are suffering and dying. Nations are in upheaval and strife. But in this trying time, I would just like to remind you, me, that is all. Every celebrity in every crisis, ever truth. Social support for Ukraine is truth. I could not agree with that more. Could not agree with that more. I've never even understood, to be honest with you guys, the interest in award shows anyway. Especially things like SAG. I mean, if people want to watch it, that's fine. Everybody can do their own thing. But it's like, our little close-knit group of actors and actresses, let's have a night where we just pat each other on the back. We'll just get down, half the room gets down on the knees for the other half, and then we switch. Who gives a fuck about your awards? Jared says, here we go. Is it correct for Ukraine to coup the government and block the democratic process on an ethnic basis? They did not coup the government, but regardless, no, it is even if they have blocked the democratic process in some forms, no, it is not reasonable for then their nuclear-powered neighbor to come in and try and take a sovereign nation. No, it's not reasonable at all. Andrew says, Russian soldier. So when are we leaving Ukraine? Ukrainian soldier loading javelin. That's the best part. You aren't. So, and the thing of it is, too, Andrew, as weird as it is, I just keep, whenever there's any situation, I think the best way to look at it, to try and see all sides, is trying to put yourself in the place of individuals. I just got to believe that a lot of these Russian soldiers are screwed. They're just, again, if what we're hearing is true, they didn't even know why they were going over there. And I just don't believe rank and file Russian soldiers really want to sacrifice their lives to try and take the Ukraine. I just don't believe it. Green says the only award show I watch is the video game awards. And I don't even watch it for the awards, but the announcements. I understand. Yeah, absolutely. And that's more so. I mean, at least the video games, like you say, you want to see what's coming up, what's coming out, what do they think, and who cares what a bunch of people who act in movies and TV are thinking about anything at any time. Karu says, do you think this can result in a bigger war if the United States starts breaking their promises? You got to be more specific, my friend. What promises? I don't know. You'd have to tell me specifically what you're talking about. Dominic says, I'm not saying Russia is 100% not in fault. I'm saying Ukraine has done some harsh treatment against the Russian side of Ukraine to the east. It's mainly why Russia is helping Donbass, Luhansk, and Donetsk. Right, but I'm not going to argue that point with you. And again, it's whether it's right or wrong, it's to be expected after Ukraine left the USSR. But Putin hasn't made a move to just try and liberate those areas or embolden those areas. He's invaded a sovereign nation. And he has changed daily since this began with what his goals are or were. So no, regardless of what went on there, I don't think it's worth an invasion from a nuclear power. Chrome says, by the way, did you see Biden's approval rating dropped again? I did. He's below what we thought. His software is around 36%. I did see that. That's crazy. Bosny says, seems for every day that goes by, the war gets more and more out of hand. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case. Memes aren't even a good method of coping anymore. No, you're right. It does. It does seem like it's getting away more and more. Rigid Rat says, it's crazy that the people of Russia don't even want to be involved in this mess, despite a lot of them not having much of a choice. Agreed. That's what I mean. I do. I feel, you do feel for the people of Russia. Zerzul says, right or wrong, on Ukraine's part doesn't justify military invasion and literal war crimes. Exactly. Happening on its citizens, their homes or hospitals. No, 100%. That if there were regions that have a heavy Russian population, and if there was unfairness going on there, well, so let me put it, okay, let me put it to you this way. For years, we've had Cuban immigrants coming to America. We know that there are a lot of people that are not fans of the Cuban lifestyle because they go out in these little rinky-dink boats. Many of them die trying to make the trek to the States. So you can rationally, fairly assume there's a lot of discomfort from a lot of people in Cuba. Now, say we had reason to believe that a good percentage of those people in Cuba are pro-America. They want to come to America and live. Can we say, well, we've got these numbers. We know that there are pro-American people here, pro-democracy people here. Cuban government, you don't treat them very well. We're going to go liberate them. So should America go in and liberate them? Same thing. I'm sure the world community and the same people that are here defending Russia would defend that move, right? Mr. Fizzaroli says, Putin versus Mayor of Kyiv boxing match. If the mayor wins, Russia ends their reign of so-called war. There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'm going to put a couple bucks on the mayor of Kyiv on that one. Hell, if you're afraid of the mayor of Kyiv, just fight his brother instead. Apathy is death. Russian people don't deserve to suffer from sanctions because our lunatic president, no matter, this is a different situation. What deserves and what's going to happen and what has to happen are two different things. If enough Russian people believe that your president is a lunatic, if the Russian people overthrow that lunatic, I'll bet you the sanctions would be released. But again, what you're saying is you just called your president a lunatic, but you think he should just be allowed to do whatever he wants with no reprisals. Because that's what you're saying. If there shouldn't be sanctions, and you certainly don't want bombs dropping on Russia, nobody does, those are the two options. So you're saying just our president's a lunatic, let him do whatever he wants. That's what you're telling us. Thick Eyebrow Guy says, well, same thing can be said of India liberating Bangladesh from Pakistan. The USA was against India at the time. I can't comment on that one because I'm not familiar with it, Thick Eyebrow Guy. And again, I don't want to comment on something I know nothing about. Philip says, from a Canadian perspective, this is exactly what Trudeau wanted. Canadians stopped caring about his attempted invocation of the Emergency Act and focusing on Ukraine. Great distraction. Oh, I agree with you. I think Trudeau got a hell of a distraction because the heat was really being amped up on him, and I agree with you there. Noah the teddy bear says, I have a proposal. We get all the world's leaders in a cocktail party. Last one standing after a whole night of drinking wins. Knowing how Russia is, that might make things worse. I was just going to say, I don't think, Noah, before I got to that last line, I was going to say, I'm not sure we want to get into a drinking contest with Russia. As much as we've got some impressive drunks over here in the U.S., I'm not liking our chances there. This is Kyle says, here's something to chew on. Russia is currently invading another country. China is committing genocide, and both are on the UN Human Rights Council. Can't make this shit up. I know. It is amazing is the word, Kyle. You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. First Wave Negativity says, in the middle of all the seriousness, there are also some funny stories. I saw some news about Portugal banning Russian salad in school cafeterias. It's so hilariously useless you can't help but laugh. Yeah. First Wave Negativity, I swear to you this happened. I'll be the first to admit we've got plenty of absolute morons here in America too. If you guys remember back when we first went into Iraq, America went into Iraq after 9/11, France refused to support that. There was a lot of backlash against France here in America because of it. People were pissed. And I swear to you, there were people who said they were no longer going to eat French fries. and said it stone-faced seriously. So yes, there is always something so absurd within something like this, it can make you laugh. Apathy is death. Overthrow our president with this military power in this country and bandits and law. You suggest revolution? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you the options. You just said your president's a lunatic. Your president is causing the global community to come after them with sanctions because they don't want to come after him with bombs. So what I'm suggesting to you is, if you think there shouldn't be sanctions and you don't feel that you guys can take out, as you said, your lunatic president, what do you want the rest of the world to do? Do you want them to just sit there and say, okay, well, yes, you have a lunatic president there, but let him go. Let him take Ukraine. Oh, he wants Sweden too? Finland? That's what I'm asking you. You say you don't believe the sanctions should be in place, so are you saying, it's a simple answer, are you saying Putin should just be allowed to do whatever he wants? Chrome says, do we know if Japan, Spain, or any of the other countries responded to Russia about their merchant ships being bombed? I don't know. I'm really curious about that. Also, did you see the media report on Sam Hydinsky fighting for both sides? No, I didn't see that. But that's a good point, Chrome. I was going to ask about that. That just kind of went away. You know, the ships that got hit by Russian bombs, I have heard nothing about it. I was wondering if you guys had. Gosha says, oh, he's a lunatic. Just let him take 20% of Georgia. Right. I mean, this man is saying to us that his president's a lunatic in one breath, but then in the next breath he's saying, but he should just be allowed to do whatever he wants. I mean, Random says, I have to apologize on behalf of Finland. Every time we kick their asses, he means Russia, every time we kick their asses in Olympic ice hockey, they start to conquer shit. 2014 and 2022, coincidence. God damn it, couldn't you guys have just tanked one for us? That's good. Finland, could you put your junior team out there when you played the Russians or something? Troll Jewel says, rich oligarchs will always find creative ways to make the poor pay for expenses only the rich can afford. Sadly, it's unlikely Putin or his sycophants will be personally affected by sanctions. I don't think Putin will because of his mental state, Troll, but you make a good point. I'm not as convinced the oligarchs won't because, again, one thing we do know is the oligarchs are used to a certain lifestyle, correct? Well, that lifestyle is gone because basically in a Russian aircraft, you can't fly anywhere. And also a lot of their holdings throughout the world have now been snatched away from them. So and again, it's just my guess. I'm not as certain that they're just going to be cool with it. Again, Putin, I think his mental state and this unyielding desire to reform the USSR takes precedence over everything else. I don't know that that's shared by the Russian oligarchs, though. Noah says, as far as the drinking party goes, U.S., Ireland, and Scotland might win based on the fact they'd win in a bar brawl started by England. So Russia might win if they don't get knocked out in the chaos. Good points. All good points. And just because I have a couple of friends, Polish friends, in real life, who are first generation here, they're moved here from Poland, and from what they tell me, from what my friends have told me, and I know we've got a lot of Polish people here. He swears that the Polish can stay right with the Russians drinking. that as drunk and crazy as they are, the Polish are just as drunk and crazy. So, we could always try and get them involved as well. Kaiser says, Putin's afraid to be fucked with. It's his name. He's probably frustrated, so he goes to work because sadly his name isn't put out. No, I don't think that's a good idea. Thick eyebrow guy. Putin should learn from Kim Jong Un how to handle citizen resistance. Yeah, I don't think there's anything to be learned from Kim Jong Un. Anything positive. Florencio says, do you think Russia will accept a peace agreement? Again, strictly my opinion. I don't think they went into this meeting with Ukraine with any amount of seriousness. I think it was to make ridiculous demands, knowing Ukraine wouldn't accept them and giving them time to set up whatever they want to do next in the war. That's just what I think. Hey, Rutikate? Hi. Chrome says, well, there's other options besides sanctions and bombs. We can just rebuild our energy sectors and other stuff we rely on Russia for, somewhat different from sanctions. Well, yeah, but that's not in the immediacy, Chrome. I agree with that, but that's not we need to have a response in real time now. ODV says, are you guys not drinking vodka? We talked about it earlier. There's always some lunatics who think I'd say they think they're making a point, but it's basically, come on, it's to try and get some thumbs up on social media somewhere that they pour out their vodka. Please. Hey, Wolf. Excuse me. Mistress says, Norway froze 30 billion NOK from Russia, or about $3.5 billion. It's only 0.3% of our sovereign oil fund, but it's still money. Absolutely right. Yeah, every little bit is a little bit more of a pinch. Masterman says, playing Civ, I learned that Russia should have waited for giant robot technology to finish before starting war so late in the game. Chrome says, same height as the YouTuber, if you don't know, he's a meme who people tricked the media into thinking it was always a shoot. Oh, yes. Okay, I do remember them doing that. I wouldn't have remembered if you hadn't said it, Chrome. Yeah, it's that same picture every time there's a mass shooting, yes. They did the same with Russia versus Ukraine. They kept falling for it. I've forgotten the name, but yes, now I know what you're talking about. I do remember that same face coming up every time there's a shooting, yes. We're just talking about that, Alex. Yeah. Have you seen the video of one of Putin's guys saying, why do we need the world if Russia is not there? Absolute delusion. No, you're right. It's terrifying delusion. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, unfortunately, I got to go. I got a few things I got to tie up this afternoon. Thank you guys again for this chat. I enjoy it so much. I appreciate it. everybody here. I appreciate everything you bring to the conversation, everybody, and amazingly so. I mean, these streams stay pretty void of any real douchebaggery, which is amazing on the internet. So, I mean, you guys have yourselves to thank for that. But thank you. And every time we do one of these, it seems like I learn a few new things as well. So I appreciate that. We'll be having lots more topical conversations, and I will continue to, whether it's during workouts or whatever, continue to get some streams in that are just for fun too, because none of us can stand having this type of intensity day after day at every turn. There'll always be, as just like when we posting a try not to laugh video, I'll always try and keep things, the lightheartedness mixed in here as well. But thank you guys very much for the stream. I appreciate it so much as always. Thank you to the mods. You guys do such a great job for us here. I appreciate it a lot. And I'll talk to you guys really soon.